All right, so we're going to talk about paid advertising now. So we talked about SEO, the way to get free traffic coming in the door. And so SEO is obviously the long-term strategy. But what do you do today? You just stood up a new company, you got all these products. How do you get traffic right now? So paid ads is often the answer to how to do that. So let me kind of walk you through the overview of what paid ads are, how they work. And I think after that, it'll make a whole lot more sense to you when to use them and why. So let's first talk about the paid advertising formula. So paid ads are an auction. So basically, you want to compete with your other competitors to be in first place. So there are three main pieces to that formula. There's a bid. So basically we bid to be in first place. And this is a simplistic formula. Let me say that there are other ways to bid in advertising. You could bid for CPMs, you could bid for, I want to pay X amount per conversion, but they're all kind of derivatives of the same thing, which is how much am I willing to pay for something? And if someone else is competing with you and they're willing to pay more, we're going to say that their bid is higher in this case. So to make it simple, let's say we're both bidding on a maximum cost per click, the max that we're willing to pay per click. So that's the first piece of this formula. How high is your bid? And so if we make this as simple as can be, if my bid is higher than yours, then I get to be in first place. But it's not that simple. So what also goes into it is the quality score. How relevant does Google think that your ad is to a given search? So just like we talked about with relative click-through rate in SEO, that also exists for paid ads. So you'll see right here in the third line, the relative click-through rate. Do people click on your ads more or less often than the ads around it? So if my ad is in third place, but it's being clicked on more often than the ad that's in second place, well, all of a sudden, Google might be saying, okay, we got to give them a better quality score because we want to get them higher up than that other ad. Because, like I mentioned before, there are incentives in play. So Google wants to incentivize you to make ads that people want to click on. And if people click on your ads more often, then they get more money. So they want to incentivize you to keep giving them more money by making good ads. So it's cyclical, it's circular almost, where I make a good ad, Google gives me more preference. I get more preference, I can make more ads, I can spend more money. It snowballs. So they want to incentivize you to make good ads that people want to click on. And so the final equal sign to this equation is your cost and your position. And so you might be saying to me, well, I'm going to do what it takes to be in first place. I want to be in first place all the time. Well, that may not always be true. Let's talk about why. So here's some facts about paid search. You only pay for clicks. And again, I made that simplistic, but at the end of the day, you only pay for what you wanted to pay for. So you only pay at a CPM. You only pay per conversion. So you are paying based on the final goal that you wanted. So what's nice about that is for a television ad, you're showing to anybody that's watching. For a billboard, you're showing to anybody that's driving by. And I'm paying for those people driving by whether or not they care at all about my billboard or not. So the good thing about paid advertising online is I can pick a really relevant audience. And even with paid search, I can pick an audience that has a direct interest in what I want to sell them. So I have a search right over here, 1999 Toyota Camry headrest. So all of these ads here, they have something exactly what I was looking for, which is a Toyota Camry headrest. So it's really the best place in advertising anywhere to match a purchaser with a product. Way better than you can with any form of traditional advertising, newspaper, billboard, anything like that. So if you've got $1,000 to spend on advertising in your first month, spend all of it here in paid advertising online. So fact number 2, every auction is a competition. So what I mean by that is there's other people out there, other advertisers that also want that spot in first place. So let's say I want to be in first and he wants to be in first and another guy wants to be in first. Well, we've got ourselves a competition and we all want to have a higher quality score and we all want to get more preference for the bids that we pay for. And we also don't want to pay too much because if we're paying too much to advertise, we're not going to be profitable. So that leads us to number 3 here. Your competitors, and it's in quotes. You see that your competitors are rarely your competitors. So that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? But let's say for an example of, let's say Volvo parts. Let's do something really similar to this metaphor here, Volvo parts. And so I search the word Volvo parts and there's 2 websites that sell Volvo parts. And then there's another one for Volvo Cars USA, the seller of Volvos. And so Now in this auction, I've got one competitor who is a direct competitor, but then I've got the Volvo, and we've all shown up for the same search. And so in essence, they're my competitor in that search result, but they're not my competitor in the real world. So I might walk up to you and I say, hey, Mr. Business Owner, who is your competitor? And you'd say, well, it's Ed down the street who sells the same thing that I do, and it's this other website online who sells something similar to me as well. But then I guarantee you when we show up in the search results, it's going to be completely different people than those two guys that you just said are your competitors. So that's what I mean by your competitors in these search results are rarely, if ever, your actual competitors in business. But you need to compete with them in these search results in order to show up in front of people's eyes. So first place, let's look at number 4 here. First place can cost past $5 per click. So I know what you're thinking at this point. You're thinking, okay, Brad, I want to be in first place. Well, you probably don't, because first place might cost past $5 per click, but third place costs $1 per click. And so what that tells me right off the bat is for 100 clicks to come in third place, I spend $100. For 100 clicks to come in first place, I spend $500. So if the result of that advertising is, let's just say for 100 clicks coming in the door, I can expect $300 in sales. That's the difference between pretty healthy profitability and losing money. So what I'm saying is you may not want to be in first place. You may not want to spend as much as you can per click, because that's going to start cutting into your margin. It's just an equation. We know how often people are going to purchase on your website. We know on average how much they're going to spend on your website once you get a pretty healthy sample size. So with that, I can say, okay, well, maybe I don't want to spend this much money. I want to spend a little bit less, and that'll be profitable for me. So you need to find out where that profitable number is for you when you're advertising online. So what are some ways to do that? Go down to number 5 here. More precise searches mean less competition. We've talked about this in terms of SEO, but it applies to paid ads as well. Many people will compete for the word running shoes. The cost for those searches will be higher because there's a lot of competition. So you got to get creative. Okay, maybe I want my keyword to be men's minimalist running shoes 10.5. So the cost will be lower on average because there's going to be less people competing for it. But there's a caveat to that. More broad searches obviously get more volume. So more broad searches have more people searching for them. So if I have a really large budget, if I'm Nike, I may not want to waste my time with men's minimalist running shoes 10.5, but that's an opportunity for you, the advertiser, because there's some peripheral, we'll call them scraps, but smaller pieces of the pie that you can eat off of to find some pretty high intent advertising. So these more broad searches do have lower intent as well. So that person searching running shoes, we talked about this in the SEO section, the person searching for running shoes, do they want to buy running shoes? Do they want to just see pictures of running shoes? What do they actually want? Whereas the person that's further down the funnel, so it's a win-win with long tail keywords. There's less competition and the buyer is more interested in buying what you have to sell. But if you do have a high budget, you're going to run out of places to spend that budget for these long tail keywords, which is why, because you may be thinking at this point, okay, why does anybody spend money on broad searches? Well, there's just a lot of people there. And so if my goal is to expand my brand and to find a lot of customers, it may be useful for me to do that, to use really broad searches, really broad keywords. So we'll go down to number 7 here. We will only advertise in channels where ROI makes sense. Say it with me at home. We will only advertise on channels where the ROI makes sense. So you're probably thinking to yourself, we're going to get to it later, but I want to do Facebook ads. I want to do Instagram ads. I want to do banner ads. I want to do Google Display Network. We are only going to advertise where it's actually giving you a positive return. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself out of business. And what I mean by a positive return is we want the margin, your after product cost margin, to make sense. So if you're advertising, you're getting a 2-to-1 ROI, you might say, okay, I spent $100 and I made $200. That's great. But if your product was only at if your product cost you $60 and you sold it for $100, well, there was only $40 left after the cost of that sale, and you spent $50 to get that transaction. So now you're just negative 10 after that sale finished. So you have to consider your product margins and your all-in costs when it comes to your ROI. And we actually have a calculator that we're going to dig into here in a little bit. So where are some of the places that we can go? Well, there's Google and Bing search. I love Google search because what I told you before, people are telling you what they want. There's very few places in the world that you can advertise to somebody that has already told you exactly what they want. So this person right here, they're searching for interior lighting fixtures. Well, if I have interior lighting fixtures, this is going to be a really, really good matchup for us. So there's 3 different kinds of keywords that I could advertise with in Google, and we're going to go into the Google Ads Manager here in a little bit, but I have exact keywords, phrase keywords, and broad keywords. And so they're kind of self-explanatory, where I can make an exact keyword that says it needs to be exactly this thing. It needs to be exactly the word interior lighting fixtures. Anything else, don't show my ad. We've got a phrase match, which is it needs to contain that in some version. So interior lighting fixtures near me, interior lighting fixtures online, then show me, because that phrase is showing up somewhere in that search. And then our biggest one is broad match. So basically, I might make my keyword interior lighting fixtures, and Google says, okay, I'm going to show your ad where it seems relevant, and I'll let you know. And so broad match is, if you have a really big budget, you're going to want to spend on broad match. If you've got a really tight budget, you're going to want to spend on exact match. And phrase match is a good kind of in-between zone. And so what you're going to do in your account is you're going to have lots of different keywords. You have tons of exact keywords, phrase keywords, broad match keywords, and you're going to see what matches up and what people are actually buying. And then over the course of months, you're going to start trimming keywords. Okay, this one isn't performing, this one is performing, this one isn't performing. You're going to be able to trim. And so over time, you can expect to get better performance, provided that you are doing what it takes to get that better performance in doing your due diligence, looking at your analytics, etc., which we will dig in how to do that later in this course. So what else can you do? Well, I can target based on a few different things within Google Ads. I can target based on devices. So let's say you have something that's really, really complex. It just doesn't make sense to look at it on a phone. And whenever people look at it on their phone, they just don't seem to purchase. Well, then don't show my ads to people on phones. Just show my ads to people on desktops, or vice versa. If I only want to show people on mobile devices, or I can even make adjustments. So I can say, okay, I'm noticing that for mobile devices, my return is about half. So I could say, well, for computers, make my bid $5, but for phones, cut that bid in half and make that $2.50. Make a negative bid adjustment for devices. So you can do that same thing for locations. So what you'll notice a lot of times is a target. So it looks like the Target logo, or like a target for a archery. So let's say I'm a local business. And I know that people within 2 miles are really likely to come to my store. People within 5 miles are a little less likely, and people within 10 miles aren't really all that likely. So I can spend the most on people that are nearby, and I can spend a little bit less on people in that second cohort, and then very little on the people in that outside cohort, knowing that they still might come to my store. So I say it's like a target because it kind of looks like the Target logo when you're setting that targeting. You can do demographics as well. You can do ads based on income, gender, parental status. So again, if I have a luxury product, we used that Louis Vuitton example before. My luxury product, maybe I want to spend a whole lot more on people at the top 10% cohort, and then I don't want to spend any money at all for people in the bottom 50%. Maybe that's the case. And because my product is so expensive, it won't make sense for them to see that ad anyway. But there's a trade-off there, like I mentioned before. Everybody wants to show their ads to the rich people, so the ads there get more expensive. So there is a balancing act. Maybe you do show it to people in the 30 to 40%, top 30%, top 40% of income, because the ads are a little less expensive. And even though they may purchase less often, the ROI might kind of even out. So you're gonna have to test that out. And so we can do lists and retargeting as well. So I can add in a pixel from my website, a tracking pixel that says, okay, if someone has been to my website before and then they search for lighting fixtures again, triple my bid, because they already know who I am. And it really does work. You might say, oh, does that actually work? Yeah, it really does. So someone comes to my website, I say, okay, yeah, they know who I am. If they're on any kind of keywords based around my brand, let's show them another ad. We also have Google and Bing Shopping. We're going to walk through that here in a little bit, but Google and Bing Shopping are these little product listing ads. And some of you guys might be saying, oh, I don't use that. Who actually uses that? A lot of people do. I do. And it's being utilized more and more as the years go on. So Shopify makes it really, really easy to connect your advertising in your store to Google Merchant Center, that's yet another account that you're going to have to Google Merchant Center, and then to Google Ads, which is where you'll advertise for that. So we'll show you how to do that. Google Shopping is really great because you only pay for people that actually click your ad. So it's like going through a catalog. So right here in this example for some car cleaning equipment here, I see the exact same products right next to each other, and I'll say, okay, well, that one's $5 cheaper than this one, so I'll just go ahead and click that one, right? And so me, the advertiser, I'm only going to pay when somebody's already okay with the offer. So you see really, really good returns on Google Shopping. It's a little more difficult than regular keyword ads, and Shopify's made it a whole lot easier for advertisers like you, but it's definitely worth it. So we're going to learn how to do that. So what are our primary KPIs here that we're going to be looking at in terms of paid advertising. So I'm going to go around this wheel from the top left. So conversions, you're going to hear the word conversions a lot. That could be purchases, but conversions are in this grand scheme of making websites and the grand scheme of digital marketing. Conversions are people doing the thing that you wanted them to do. So you as a Shopify merchant, your conversion is selling your product. But let's say you're a real estate company. Your conversion might be getting a new lead. Or let's say you're a car repair shop. A conversion might be getting someone to call you and schedule an appointment. So for your sake, a conversion is going to be making a purchase or a transaction. So let's keep going around this wheel. Impressions. How many people saw your ad in organic results? And so impressions can be tricky because it really is, if somebody saw your ad, that's an impression. But if your ad is way below, if someone has to scroll to see it, as long as your ad is still on that page, that's going to be an impression. So sometimes if you have a really low position, you might say, oh my gosh, I'm getting so many impressions, but not a lot of clicks. Well, because people aren't actually scrolling to see where your ad actually is. So just know that. We've got average position or rank. And so that one's pretty self-explanatory. In the search results, that's how high up you were. Were you third place, fourth place, second place? We have click-through rate. So how often do people click through to your ad? So if I had 100 impressions and 2 people clicked on the ad, I now have a 2% click-through rate. And that does tie into relative click-through rate that we talked about before. We also have ROI, which is return on investment. Pretty straightforward. What was my revenue? What was my cost? That's going to be my ROI. So when we talk about ROI, we're going to be talking about marketing ROI, and it's just a simple formula. Return versus what I paid. But for your business, you do not just want to use marketing ROI. You want to include your cost. You want to think about the cost of the products that you sold. So it gets a little more complicated, and we have a calculator that we're going to go through here in a sec. We have cost per conversion. So that's the what you paid on average for each conversion that you got. Also self-explanatory. Cost, number of conversions, you get your metric there. Cost per click, on average, how much did you pay for each click? So CPC is going to be one of your main metrics. You're going to want to keep that as low as possible. The lower your CPC, the better your profitability is going to be. And then back around to conversion rate. So what percent of users buy on your website? So that's a metric that we're going to want to keep as high as possible. So we want a high conversion rate. We want a low cost per click. We want a low cost per conversion. We want a high ROI. So just look at these formulas as we're going around here: conversions over users, total cost over clicks, etc. These are going to be all of the primary KPIs that you're going to want to learn, you're going to want to know to be profitable for your online advertising. So I mentioned the calculator before. Let's actually go through this calculator that I was talking about.